Hey guys, what is up? My name is Stephen Howard, and I am known as the Editing Bard. Today, I am bringing you campaign update number 3. Super excited to have you guys here. First and foremost, on the front end, just so you know that all of the chat is open. So if you have any questions, please feel free to chuck them over into the chat area, and I will be answering those as we go along for the duration of our time together. Super excited to have you guys here. Going to be doing a read through of the first chapter of my upcoming debut novel, The City of Snow and Stars. And then after that, I'm going to be doing the character reveal for my favorite character, Údar. Very, very excited to introduce you guys to him. I introduced you to Trinia last week. She's the main female protagonist. Údar is the main male protagonist. So super excited to be able to introduce you guys to him. As you can see, I'm coming to you in my vocal booth because I wanted to make sure that this actually sounded good while I was going through that. So again, welcome to everyone. And I don't have a way of sharing the manuscript with everybody on here. Hey, chapter preview. So I don't have a way of actually like sharing the document live on here. So unfortunately, you guys just get to stare at my bearded face the entire time as I kind of go through it. Hey, Jennifer. And so, yeah. But for those of you who do end up going to pre-order, you do get early access to the book. And so the first chapter is actually up in the private Facebook group for everybody to look over and review and enjoy. So I'm going to be doing a couple more. I'm probably going to read up till chapter 5 because that's kind of when we get the main sense of everything. If I can try and figure out a way to like get it up on Canva and just kind of go through the slides and stuff, I might try and do that. I'll have to see if it works. I haven't tried it, didn't have enough time today. So that's kind of where it's at. All right, so I'm going to dive in here. I have the comments up on the side, so I'll be able to read. I will pause periodically because I've already done this once today. And as you can tell, my voice is super deep and sultruous. I don't think sultruous is a word, but I'm going to trademark it anyway. But I'm going to take some water breaks at the scene breaks. I know the words. All right. Who's ready? Are you guys ready? I know I'm ready, but are you ready? I have to know these things. While I'm trying to get the stupid Word document to pop up here. All right, we got one ready. I see one ready. Ready Player 2. They were born ready. Monica's ready. All right. Good grief. This stool is no bueno. All right. Here we go. Trinia ran as fast as her legs would carry her through the streets towards freedom. She would make it. She had to make it. The fate of her people depended on it. Ducking in an alley, Trinia paused a moment to catch her breath under an ox cart. This isn't how today was supposed to go, she mumbled. None of it was supposed to happen. She shook her head and tucked a strand of silver hair behind her ear. Can't help that now. She crept out from under the cart and peeked around the corner. All clear. While the upper streets had been mostly empty, here they would be crowded with people, and she couldn't risk a faster pace until she was closer to the gate. Trinia flipped the hood up and merged with the crowd moving towards the marketplace in the center of the city. If she was lucky, no one would be the wiser that she was there, and the guards wouldn't know she was missing until it was too late. As Trinia walked along, she took in the ruined buildings that lay mixed with those that had been carved into the mountain. Most were crumbling or in desperate need of repairs, while those that had been tended to seemed only a little better. Her heart ached as it imagined what it might have looked like at its height. Moving ever down toward the gates, Trinia admired those who eked out a living here. They didn't have the power her family held, and yet they still seemed to thrive. These were the people she was trying to protect, even if her father couldn't see that. Finally, she was within sight of her goal. The southern gate lay on the other side of the marketplace, and 1,000 or so souls that milled around it. It was now or never. The sound of her father's personal guards calling behind her froze her for a heartbeat. Then Trinia took off at a sprint, one thought echoing in her mind. Run. Trinia dodged around farmers, blacksmiths, and masons as she raced through the crowded marketplace. Casting a furtive glance behind her, she could see the guards closing in. How had they discovered her so quickly? The grating sound of the portcullis lowering reached her, and she turned her attention back to the goal at hand. Escape. Panic began to rise as she watched it get lower, and she could practically feel the guards breathing down her neck as she finally cleared the onlookers. At the last moment, she threw herself forward, sliding under the gate as it slammed down behind her. The guards cursed and swore. Trinia cast a quick glance back, smirking. Not today. Not wasting time, Trinia rushed to the outside stables, snagged the first horse she came across, and leapt onto it bareback. "Yah!" she cried. The horse reared and bolted with Trinia barely hanging on. If she failed now, there would be no second chance. Her father would see to that. It was less than a mile from the gates of the city to the forest, and once she reached it, she would at least have a fighting chance. There were enough legends and folk stories among the tribes about what roamed those woods, that few but the bravest would dare follow her. Well, her father's guards didn't really have a choice. It was either they brought her back, or they died. The wind blew Trinia's hood back as she rode, letting her hair flow in silver streams behind her. She regretted not putting it up into a ponytail, but there was no time for that now. The coal-black beast on which she rode flew across the rock plain that separated the city from the Forest of Nex, carrying her nearer to her goal. The thundering sound of hooves behind her caused the hairs on the back of her neck to rise, and she glanced over her shoulder to see at least 10 men on horseback quickly gaining on her. Trinia clutched a handful of the horse's mane and gave it a swift kick to the ribs to spur it on. The forest loomed before her as the sun set behind the mountains to her left. And while the prospect of going into the forest at night wasn't ideal, it would increase her chances of escaping from her father. At least, she hoped so. No sooner had the thought passed through her mind, she found herself flying through the air and landing hard on the ground. The world spun around her as she picked herself up and saw the horse on the grass a couple of feet behind her, an arrow in its flank. It would be of no help to her now, and it broke her heart that it should have to suffer on her account. She had a feeling it wouldn't be the only one. Back on foot, She had a 50-yard dash before she made it to the forest, and the cursing guards closing in on her. Her lungs burned, and her legs ached as she raced towards the forest. They were close now, and Trinia realized she realized what she'd have to do if she was going to get away, but she hated the thought of it. As the low branches wrapped her in their gnarled embrace, Trinia flicked out her hand, and in the same motion, a copy of her continued running the opposite direction into the woods. Diving into a thicket, Trinia watched as the guards came into view, looking around wildly in all directions before finally spotting the decoy. "There she is! After her!" called the lead horseman as he urged his mount forward, the others following closely behind. Trinia wished she didn't need to do it, but there was no other way. Her stomach churned and she felt like vomiting. When she could no longer hear the sounds of the guards, Trinia crawled out of the bushes and started to make her way southeast. She took one last look back at the city at the base of the holy mountain, whispering a quiet goodbye to the world she'd known for these past 16 years of life. And she prayed she would never see the city of snow and stars again. Scene break! What'd you guys think so far? Which, by the way, talking this much, you guys know how much I talk. Whew. Takes its toll. Thank you, the Dancing Bardess. Thank you, Mama Street. Appreciate that. I've got that deep, gravelly tone because I've already done this once before. I've been talking to people all day. So my voice is like, oh, yeah. Hey, David, thank you. Yeah, the clone is probably one of my favorite aspects of Trinia, and the further we get into the story, I already have some corrections that I got to make in order to kind of help it flow a little bit, but super, super excited about it. Andy Serkis could read The Hobbit in 12 hours. You can def read your first chapter without your voice breaking. Andy Serkis is a boss. Let's just say that. Like, he's a boss. He's also done this a lot longer than I have. But yeah. All right. So let's get ready and move into the next scene here. She ran, the guards in hot pursuit behind her, closing in like a noose around her neck. Even the trees around her seemed to claw at her and slow her down, catching her clothes, scratching her skin, tangling her hair. Everything seemed to be against her, but still she ran. The forest was growing dark and it was becoming harder to see. She could only hope that it meant the guards would have to. Something hard hit her in the shoulder, spinning her around and sending her sprawling on the forest floor. Pain exploded in her shoulder and down into her chest as she landed, sending the crossbow bolt the rest of the way through. Her breath became ragged and short as blood began to fill her lungs. Stars, both real and imagined, flashed in her vision. They'd caught her. "Idiot! You've signed our death warrants," came a gruff voice from off to her left. "I thought it would slow her down," replied a panicked voice. Her father would no doubt have them all killed for taking her life. If they were lucky, he'd be quick about it. She heard one of the men drop to the ground, his footsteps getting closer until a face appeared above her, but it was blurry and without definition. She still lives. "For how long?" asked the gruff voice. "Not long," replied the blurry face. She heard the gruff one swear, but It all seemed so far away and close at the same time. The stars seemed brighter and colder. The mossy ground where she'd fallen was damp from the autumn rain that had passed earlier that afternoon, its scent filling her senses with its earthly richness. It seemed almost unfair how she could appreciate these things when she knew this would be the last time she would. The forest around her fell deathly still, where moments ago the birds had been singing their nightly tunes, and the horses' breaths seemed muted. There was the sickly sound of metal cutting through flesh, and she cocked her head to the side to see a tall figure in the fading light walking toward her, sword in hand. A headless form slid off the horse behind him with a loud thud. Even through the blur, she knew her father's form. He knelt down in front of her, and she could feel his cold eyes on her. So, he'd come for her himself. "Did you think you could escape me?" His voice sent a shiver down her spine. She coughed and smiled. Her father wouldn't have his army now, nor the pleasure of torturing her to create it. "I'm dying." He leaned in closer, and his face came into focus. Those cold silver irises glared at her from beneath high brows, and his short-cropped hair pulled back into a warrior's knot. "You die when I say you will die." His face blurred again, and the lights dimmed faster. "No, not this time." Her lungs protested the blood, and she coughed and seized, her eyes going wide as she gasped for air. She managed one final strangled cry of "Daddy!" before darkness took her and all fear slipped away into oblivion. Scene break. I saw you guys commenting over there. I gotta see what you're saying. It's really hard when I'm like when I'm reading and I see the comments going. I'm like, oh, but I want to read. Oh, hey, Renee. Love that she felt regret for sending out the clone. Gives a hint that it's not a simple aspect of her character. And oh, thank you for the voices. Yes, I'm trying. I'm trying them out. If I end up doing an audiobook, like, yeah, like that's what I want to do. Like, it's like production. Everybody has a voice. Like that's maybe not the guards, but everybody important. Yes, thank you. Yes, that line, "You die when I say you die," that just goes to show you just how big of a jerk this guy is. His name's Kadron. You will be introduced to him at some point, but he's just the worst. No Father of the Year awards for Kadron. Yeah, but I love that line. It's one of my favorite lines. It's one of the ones that definitely made it over from the first draft. All right, here we go. With the guards no longer on her trail, Trinia slowed her pace, if only a little, to give herself time to recover. The stiffness was beginning to settle in from her tumble off the horse, and she hoped it wouldn't be worse come the dawn. As night closed in fully around her, the hairs on the back of her neck rose once more, and she felt like she was being watched. Deciding that sleeping on the ground in a forest as infamous as this would be incredibly stupid, Trinia climbed up the first tree that provided a limb low enough for her to jump up and grab, until a good 10 feet, she hoped, stood between her and whatever lived here. Try as she might, though, sleep didn't come. It had been chased away several times throughout the night by something sniffing and growling at the bottom of the tree where she'd taken refuge. When the dim light of morning finally crept through the dense trees, there was nothing but unusually large paw prints scattered about. Note to self, don't sleep on the ground ever, she mused as she placed her hand beside the print, which was easily 2 or 3 times bigger. She gulped. Looking out into the forest, she brushed off her hands. Okay, Trinia, think. You need to head east. Easy. She looked up through the trees towards the rising sun, marking her direction, and began making her way east as best she could. The minutes slowly turned into hours as she trudged on, the only change being the trees, which seemed to grow taller and more menacing, if such a thing were possible. The shadows became deeper the farther she walked, and she feared that she'd strayed from her course somewhere towards the heart of the forest. Panic slowly crept in, and she felt the return of eyes watching her. Turning around, she thought she caught glimpses of movement in the murky light that made it through the canopy of leaves and pine, but she couldn't be sure. Night seemed to take her by surprise, and she was left scrambling to find a suitable tree to spend the night in once again. She managed, though it was only minutes before the forest succumbed to darkness. Again, all throughout the night, she was kept awake by the sounds of sniffing and growling at the base of her tree, and the lack of sleep began to take its toll. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she clung to the branch, praying to the gods to protect her. But she doubted they cared enough to listen to her pitiful pleas. Trinia jerked awake, and she lost her balance, dropping to the ground. Stars burst in her vision, and wind was knocked out of her, leaving her gasping on the forest floor. Light filtered through the trees around her as she gasped and gulped, lungfuls of air before rolling on her side as the tears came again. I never should have ran away, she thought as she pushed herself off the ground. I'm going to die out here. A twig snapped somewhere off in the trees, and fear quickly replaced the pain. Trinia stood, looking all around, feeling that familiar sense of being watched. Another twig snapped, closer this time, and she turned. Show yourself! She screamed. Everything was still. A shadow moved in the distance, sending a wave of goo flesh up Trinia's arms before she turned and ran blindly away from it. She could hear it behind her as twigs snapped and the dry leaves crackled underfoot. She had to get away. But after nothing to eat or drink and little to no sleep for 2 nights, Trinia's body finally gave out. She lay face down in the leaves, breathing hard, head spinning, listening to whatever was slowly coming up behind her. Maybe if she didn't move, it wouldn't see her. A hand gripped her shoulder and she cried out, Please, don't kill me! Trinia was rolled onto her back and she stared up into the grizzled face of a man. He had only one good eye and his jaw was framed by a bushy graying beard. His hair was unkempt and his brow was furrowed. Trinia wept, exhausted. Please don't kill me. The man grunted, pulling something from his belt and tipping it into her mouth, soothing her parched tongue. Trinia wanted to thank him, to say anything really, but she felt her body go completely limp. She tried to struggle, to punch, to kick, but her body wouldn't respond. Oh, Virni, please protect me. The wild man put his arms under her and lifted up and began to walk, his long legs pumping as he carried her over the rough terrain. Trinia tried to fight the effects of the drink, but to no avail, and she resigned herself to try and figure out where the man was taking her. This proved more difficult than she expected due to the cursed forest cover blocking the sunlight. Virni, protect me. Hear my prayers. Trinia wasn't sure if the gods listened, or even cared for that matter, considering the curse they had blessed her with. Still, she didn't have a lot of options. The wild man seemed to have energy without end. On and on he walked, ever in a singular direction, turning neither left nor to the right. On several occasions, he took off at a sprint for seemingly no reason at all, which only served to confuse Trinia all the more. Finally, hours, or had it been days, darkness began to fall again. Trinia could finally begin to feel her lips and tried to speak to the man. Yes. The man grunted, looking at her with his one good eye, and shook his head. He placed a calloused finger on her lips. Why won't he let me talk? She wondered. When the hairs on the arm stood on end and the feeling of eyes watching returned, she thought she understood. We're in danger. The wild man took off in another one of his sprints, running like Madol's hounds were nipping at his heels. Odd, strangled cries erupted from behind that sent a chill to her heart. Merciful gods, what is that? Trinia hadn't heard anything like it before, and she wasn't sure if she wanted to know what creature was responsible for making it. The sounds seemed to surround them, and Trinia wasn't sure if they were going to make it to wherever the man was trying to take her, which at this point seemed much safer than being left in the forest. Trinia felt a prickling in her fingers and toes, and she thanked Virni for letting her regain feeling in her limbs. She wondered a moment if the feeling of weightlessness was a symptom of whatever the man had given her, realizing just before she hit the ground that the man had tossed her. Unable to catch herself, Trinia hit the ground hard. Her head bounced as it hit and connected with the earth, sending her into darkness. She could still hear everything around her, despite being unable to see. There were horrible cries, a menacing growl, and the sounds of a scuffle. He left me to die, Trinia thought. Threw me aside to save his own hide. As quickly as the cries came, they were gone, and the forest was silent once more, save for the low growl at her feet. Virni, don't abandon me here. Something wet touched her hand, and she screamed, tears rolling down her cheeks as she tried to come to terms with what was going to happen. Blinking several times, Trinia's vision returned, if a little blurry. She looked up slowly towards where the hot breath fell on her hand, seeing a wolf 3 times the size of a mountain wolf that lived near the city. She whimpered and tried to move her hand to cover her neck, but only managed to move it a couple of inches. Maybe it would kill her while the drug was still in effect and she wouldn't feel a thing. But the gods would probably prefer that she suffer, so they would wait before letting it devour her. Yes, that was much more likely. Minutes passed, and the beast didn't move. Seeming satisfied that she was alive, it turned its head and glanced back towards the forest, as if whatever had attacked would return. It was then that Trinia noticed that she was no longer under the cover of boughs, but of a cloudy September sky. Relief mixed with anxious fear as she waited for the feeling to return to her limbs enough to move again. She doubted she would outrun the wolf, but she would try. But as the night wore on, Trinia could no longer keep her eyes open. She began to drift off under the watchful yellow eye of the wolf, noticing it only had one good one, just as hers closed, exhaustion finally taking its toll. End of chapter. All right, guys. So that was the full chapter 1. And I got to say, I'm super happy with the fact that I've nailed it twice at under 30 minutes. So I'm super, super stoked about that. I would love to hear, I keep forgetting that I moved the camera over here. I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are and all that kind of stuff. What was your favorite part? What part was just like, wow, let me know. Waiting for stuff to update. Okay. Yes. Definitely good practice. Lots of practice. Very excited about practicing. Mama Street, wow, love that death scene. Was really the clone, and that the wild man became the wolf. Yes. So I loved that part of writing that scene with the clone. There's so many more implications to everything that happens between Trinia and the clones, because they are, perfect duplicates of herself, and so what they think, see, feel is what she would feel. And I wanted to try and convey that in that snippet, and then come back to Trinia and everyone being like, wait, what? So yeah, super glad that you enjoyed that. Thank you so much, Renee. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Yes, I love twists. I love doing twists. That's one of my favorite parts of writing. And for those who have read any of my fan fictions and stuff, I mean, you guys know what all the angsty twists that I put in my kind of stuff. Action's really smooth and flows nicely. Thank you. I tried very hard to have it flow, and where it wouldn't get like, it wouldn't feel like bogged down, or that there was too much happening, or that it was just boring. Tried to have it be a nice kind of consistency throughout. Yeah, so much more complex. And I mean, really, the clone stuff really starts coming into play. I would say more so around chapter 16. Trying to remember. But yeah, all sorts of fun stuff starts happening, and the implications that come with it, all that kind of stuff. Just, oh, I love it so much. All right, so now I'm going to do the character reveal for Údar with the picture that I made. Super excited, because I mean, if Trinia is complex, I mean, Údar is an enigma. So here we go. Make sure it's on the right one. Yeah, it's on the right one. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Bam! Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce Údar, the angsty, cantankerous muffin, who is just kind of a jerk. Sometimes, not all the time, but definitely most of the time in this book. Which you may wonder why he's the main one of the main protagonists. So a little backstory on. Okay, well, yeah, Cheyenne, no, she knew about it because I commissioned her to do the beautiful aesthetics that I've been doing. So it's she already knew about that one. But so to give you guys a little bit of backstory on Údar and why he is known by me as Brodar, is because he's a bro. He is based off of the first original character that I ever created when I started writing, back when I was 16. His name at that point was Elendar, and he was a ranger from Middle Earth, and he found himself winding up in Narnia. It was for my Narnia Lord of the Rings crossover fan fiction. And so it was very much me wanting to put myself into the world and all that kind of stuff. And used his character a lot for that. And then I wanted to try and do something different. I wanted to write my own trilogy. Um, so that actually kind of started the process of me working on what is now a 12 book series. So there will be 12 in all, and each will be broken up into three, or it'll be 4 trilogies total. So this is The City of Snow and Stars is book 1 of the first trilogy. And Údar was also a part of my Lord of the Rings fan fiction when I started writing that on Wattpad, probably about 3 years ago now. And it was kind of going back to basics for me with characters and stuff. I knew Elendar, but I wanted to give him a new name. And so I scoured the interwebs and finally found this one, Údar. So Údar actually is a real name. It's Irish. I'm not going to tell you what the name means, but you can look it up on Google Translate. And then I'll leave you with that little Easter egg, and you guys can take from that what you will. So I came up with the name, got that going, and started writing again. And he's really evolved over the last couple of years, especially. It's been kind of crazy because I based him very heavily off of myself, and that's still the case in many ways. However, he grew into his own character that I kind of had a hard time reconciling, to be honest, because I was like, "You're leaving me?" Like it was in the feels, and it was fascinating to watch how his character kind of changed and morphed. So at the beginning of this book, when I started writing the first draft, he was more of a like caring father figure, mentor type person. In this one, he's a cantankerous old geezer. I know he doesn't look old, but he is. And that's revealed in the book how old he is. So I'm not going to spoil that. So if you want to know, you go pre-order because I'm not going to tell you. And you get early access. Just saying. He changed into something different when I replotted it, and he had pain and baggage and just bitterness in his heart towards God first and foremost, and then also towards the Ergid, which is Trinia's people. So it did a lot of really interesting. It changed a lot of the dynamics about him. To your question, Jennifer, I actually used what's called Artbreeder. So if you go to artbreeder.com, you can actually create character pictures. And that is how I did Údar's. It took me probably about an hour or so of smashing faces together to make this. And what was interesting about this is that this is actually not how I imagined Údar. I imagined Údar more like moi, only with hair. And that wasn't fair to him. It was very cruel of me. But when I was mashing this together, I wanted somebody who had a fierceness in his eyes, and he got a set jaw. And when I saw this picture kind of come to life, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is Údar. Like I knew just immediately that this is what Údar looked like. And it was different than how I had originally imagined him being. But I was okay with it. Because he's morphed enough and he's become his own thing that it was just really cool to be able to look at this and be like, holy crap, like this is what I've been looking for Údar. So very, very excited for him. When I set out to write this book, it was initially supposed to be just a standalone book. And as I continued to write, I realized that in my own fashion, it was getting bigger in terms of story. And so I was like, okay, it's probably going to be a duology. And then I realized it was going to be a trilogy. And then this epiphany happened that Údar is the thread that ties all of my books together. So all 12 books have Údar in them. That's not technically a spoiler for you guys. It's what it is. So it was really cool to see it like all of a sudden, like, wow, because he's on this journey, right? And it's alluded to between him and his interactions with God, because God manifests himself in a as a physical, as a young teenager, and there's very specific reasonings for that in the book. But God is known as Elohai, and he talks with Údar. He comes in and he's sitting next to him, talking with him, and they have these interactions. And a lot of those conversations between Údar and God actually reflect conversations that I myself have asked of God, of, like, well, why is all this happening? Like, I don't want to do what you want me to do. Like, I don't want to finish my journey. I don't want to do the hard things. Like, why won't you just leave me alone? And these are some of the things that Údar asks himself and asks of God, and they're reflective of me. And I have no doubts that people are going to see themselves in some of Údar's mannerisms and just the way he approaches things. He's got a very dry sense of humor in many cases, and he loves to sass people. He doesn't like being sassed, but he loves sassing people. So I mean, just like so much of this character is, I love Údar's character because he's so complex. He's so interesting, and he's I have a hard time describing him as a character now, because of just how intricate his story is. I mean, I spent 2 hours in one sitting just writing his backstory for this book, because it technically still kind of includes the Narnia and the Lord of the Rings. I can't say that obviously like in the book, but I allude to him having many adventures before he gets here, and it's kind of a tribute to those earlier writings. Do you guys have any questions about Údar? I'm there's a lot that I could actually cover with you guys about him, without getting into a lot of the spoilers and stuff. But I'm going to take another water break. So I need you guys to ask questions while I drink. So while you guys are thinking about it and getting stuff typed up, one of the other things that I love about Údar is that he's a total badass. There's a scene in this second draft that I've written where Údar takes on like 5 or 6 guys by himself, unarmed, and I try and pose it in a very realistic sense. Like, it's not that Údar is superhuman. He is human, but he's very, very proficient. He's an excellent swordsman. I mean, you put a weapon in his hand, he's likely going to know how to use it. But he takes on these guys barehanded because he's already like chucked his sword into somebody's back, and he disarms them. Like he just, I mean, is like brutal and savage what he does, and there's very specific reasons for that. But I mean, like writing it out, I was scared of Údar. I was like, remind me not to get on Udar's bad side because like he will mess people up. Sounds a little like you're setting up the apprentice master trope or the hero with the mentor, only maybe your master mentor figure is really messed up. Kind of. Yeah. It's one of those yes and no when it comes to Údar, because like it's actually something that Trinia like desires from him and he wants no part of. And so, and the purpose of how I set this up in the book when it relates directly between Údar and Trinia is that Údar for me, and this is something that I've done and I've written into Údar because I wanted to explore the kind of the consequences of my own actions, is that Údar despises Trinia. He hates her. We learn why, because I had to have more reason than just like, well, she's Erged. I needed a deeper reason, and I did come up with that just recently. But the thing that happens is that he doesn't want to train her. He doesn't want anything to do with her. And despite God very clearly telling him, like, I want you to take care of her, Údar doesn't. He doesn't want to do that at all. So he's begrudgingly, yeah, it's kind of, it's a reluctant mentor, in a sense. But the reason why I wrote it this way is because there's a beautiful moment which you guys won't see until the book. For those who pre-order, those people who pre-order will see it, but no one else is going to, because it comes after chapter 5, and that's where I'm going to be ending the read-alongs. But Trinia has this beautiful moment with God, and Údar hates that she's gotten this gift. And what I wanted to show is that, there are times, and again, I'm using myself as an example here. As a Christian, someone has looked differently than I thought they should look when they said that they were a believer. Or someone showed up to church, and they weren't dressed in church clothes, and I made a harsh judgment call on them. And I thought about, what would it be like if I actually had to interact with that person and I was supposed to be leading them and I failed to do that? What would happen? And exploring that concept is kind of what happens with Údar. And you see it more towards the end of the book. But this thing with him is that it's like, well, she's Ergid. How could she possibly have come to know God? And why on earth would he offer something to her? The equivalent of salvation is his power in you, kind of thing. And I wanted to explore that because that's a question that I've wrestled with, and in judgment calls that past me has made, and I wanted to take that to an extreme. And so that's kind of what and how I built Údar and Trinia's relationship, is kind of based off of that. And so like through the book, like you get irritated with Údar. It's like, bro, stop it. Like, stop being a jerk. Like, please. But yeah, so that's kind of one of the aspects. That's one part of Údar's story with this, is that he doesn't want to do that, and he's very judgmental about it. And he straight up tells Trinia that he wants nothing to do with her at one point, which there has repercussions and lasting consequences because of that. So I won't get too much farther into it because it will get into some spoilers. But that's kind of the basic idea there. When it's it's kind of, he's supposed to have a mentor-apprentice relationship, but he's refusing to do it and judging her at the same time, which then leads to things, bad things. Hey, how's it going? Oh, notifications. Good old notifications. Hate them so much. Do you guys have any other questions or thoughts on Údar, or just on the chapter in general? While I get some more agua la vida. Yeah, it definitely sets up epic failures. And he's too blinded by his own grumpiness and his own selfishness to see it. So, which there's lots of things that that come from that. One of the things that I'm excited to show you guys in the coming weeks, because I'll be doing some. I'm not going to do a reveal for all of the characters, mainly just because I'm going to be focusing on getting into revisions within the next like 2 weeks or so. But I'm going to pick out some of my favorite characters and talk about them. Batani will probably be the next one. She's a shapeshifter. She's one of the Eomliad. And then after that will probably be Ulcia. Ulcia is a banshee. She's actually the banshee queen. And she and Údar have a past history with each other that is not so bueno. And there's some really interesting things about her that and what she represents. Because in the book they're called the Bavansi. It's not actually French, it's Scottish Gaelic, and I'm probably butchering it. But they are basically Scottish banshees, and they are 10 times more frightening than anything Twilight ever had to offer humanity. I mean, they're just straight up terrifying, which is why I wanted them in here. I actually pulled a lot from Irish, Scottish Gaelic, and Welsh culture to influence a lot of the different countries and stuff. Which I'm super excited because the map is really coming along. I've gotten pretty much most of it done for the continent of Wintenaith. I've got some additional editing that I got to do on it, but I should be able to be revealing that to at least part of it to the beta group within the next week or so, which super excited. Now I'm going to pull out of this and do the other one. Maybe. Yes, it did it. And it did it right the first time. So for those of you who haven't heard, and by the way, I'm still taking questions. I'm moving on to my next topic, but I'm still taking questions. I'm doing a referral giveaway. So this means that you have the opportunity to win book merch. So you're going to win a custom water bottle. And on it says, "The City of Snow and Stars. How far would you go to outrun your future?" And then all of the bookmarks you see, they are bookmarks, are based on the aesthetics that the Dancing Bardess so kindly did for me. And so you win all of the bookmarks, and you can hand them out to friends. You can hoard them. I mean, really, it's entirely up to you. But you get that stuff for free. Now, how does it work? So this is referring people over to buying my book. because I still need your guys' help with it. And here's how it looks. Almost there. Okay. So I need to hit $5,000 minimum to make sure that this book gets published. Okay. I want this book to get published. I want you guys to get signed copies of my book. So I need your help in telling people about it. Now, here's how you do it. You come to this page and you go down to the right-hand corner over here where you see it says, I only have 9 days left, by the way. So 9 days left to meet this goal. My goal is still 8,000. And there's a reason for it. Because like, as you guys heard, I'm ready for an audiobook. I want the audiobook. Selfishly, if you guys don't want the audiobook, I still want the audiobook. But if I hit my 8,000, everyone who pre-orders at the $39 and up, which includes the shipping, gets the audiobook for free when it's published. So you guys won't have to go and pay for it again. I'm going to just give it to you along with the ebook. But I have to raise a total of 8,000 in order to do that. And I need a minimum of 5 to get the paperback done. I have 9 days left. So you come down here and you see where it said, where you see that little chain link. That little chain link right there gives you a custom link that is tracked. So every time you send it to somebody, they click and then they purchase the book, they pre-order it. That goes into the pot for you. Your name goes in. So they come from you based on that unique number. They buy it, they do it, and you get a reward. So the person at the end of this who has referred the most people who have purchased and signed up, they get everything. They get the book merch, they get the book marks, and the water bottle. In addition to that, I've also got some stuff that I'm doing on the side. So one, if I hit $4,000, which is the half of my total goal, I'm donating $200 of my own money to the local animal rescue here in Baker City, Oregon. At 75%, everybody who wants one will get a free copy of my Getting Your Story Started worksheets, which they're like $30. They're not up on my website right now. I'm transitioning my website, lots of stuff. But you're gonna get those for free. And so that's like 6 worksheets worth plus the writing template that I created. At 100%, you all get a free audiobook. So yippee-ki-yay for that. And in addition for that, if I hit 125%, 120, 125, something like that. If I hit that, I dye my beard neon blue. Like, what more could I possibly, like, you guys know I love my beard. I don't want to dye it blue. So I wouldn't be entirely hurt, but if you really are desperate to see me dye my beard blue, because I'll stream it. Like, I will straight up stream it on YouTube. The entire process of dyeing this piece of perfection right here, neon blue. Thank you so much, David. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's one of those things, you know. It's a process, and you know, I picked like the best year to try and publish a book. Kind of, not really. But yeah, so that's kind of all of the things that are happening. So I'm sitting at just below $3,000 right now. I need at least 5 in the next 9 days in order to make sure that I meet my requirements to get the paperback and ebook published. I am only one guy. I only have so many friends. Most of the friends that I've reached out to have already purchased the book. So if you know anybody who would be interested in reading this book, it is Christian fantasy, which turns out not even Christians like reading Christian fantasy in large part, because they're usually like B-rated movies. This is not a B-rated movie type book. Like, I talk about hard stuff. I talk about sexual abuse. I talk about mental and physical and emotional abuse. If you didn't get a hint of at least some of those with Kadrins, you only die when I let you die. That part, that would be abuse. I talk about human trafficking. I ask the questions of why does God let bad things happen? I don't preach to you in this book. What I do is I look at the internal conflicts that I've had and I throw my characters into them and I say, figure it out. They don't have answers. I don't have answers. But what I do is I explore these concepts and I want to have discussions about them. I want to talk to people about them. I want to talk about how we should talk more about abuse and how bad it is and how we shouldn't stand by and watch it happen to people. I want to talk about human trafficking and how there are more people enslaved now than any other point in time in history through human trafficking, and how that is fueling the pornography industry, which is last I checked, $100 billion a year industry. So like, these are some of the things that I want to tackle and I want to have conversations about. I don't want to give somebody an answer. I want to discover the answer with people. I want to tackle hard questions like, why does God let bad things happen? Because guess what? Bad things happen. For those of you who either know me personally or have watched my exceedingly long 3-hour testimony video that I have on my YouTube channel, it's under the playlist That Writing Life, I believe. I go into my testimony in fairly detail. It's fairly detailed about how I was sexually abused and I was a porn addict, and I've been through and experienced hard things. I've been through depression. I've been on the edge of harming myself and ending things because I was so depressed. I've been there. So this book is fueled from those things and those times when I had all that stuff happen. And I was like, God, where were you? Where were you in this? Why did you let this happen? Why did I have to go through all of this in order to get to where I am today? Like, because I left a trail of pain behind me, just like some of my characters have. And that is why I've continued to push and to write this book, and why I am committed in spite of the fact that very few people want to read anything that's labeled Christian, for one, but Christian fantasy, to kind of take it that step further. I'm not okay with not having these questions answered, and I want people to explore them with me. I want people to ask me questions about them because I'm an open book. You know, I mentioned in my testimony video how I had this moment where we had moved out here to Baker City, and I was walking and I just felt like I hit a wall, and all of a sudden God gave me the answer to my question of why did all of these things happen? Why was I molested and abused for 9 years as a child? Why did I go through the pain of pornography addiction and almost committing suicide and doing all of these things, leaving past relationships damaged? Why? And he straight up said, I could have stopped all of that from happening. Needless to say, I wasn't particularly thrilled with the answer. But then he showed me all of the people that I've met over the years, not just friends, but I'm talking about the people with the special kind of broken that I've dealt with. People on Wattpad would reach out to me and they're like, will you pray for me? How did you forgive your grandfather? How did you do that? how does this look? Like and they're telling me these things, these deeply personal and intimate things to a stranger. And it was because I was open about it, and I was not hiding. I wanted to engage with those people. And God showed me the lives that I've been able to interact with and pray over, pray for, and I'll never know those people. I won't. I don't even know their real names because we all used usernames. So I have no idea who these people are, whether they got help, but my hope is that by me talking to them, it encouraged them to talk to their parents about it, to talk to a counselor about it, to talk to somebody who is safe about it. Because these kids now are dealing with this kind of stuff, and we can no longer turn a blind eye to it. And the purpose of this book, my passion about it, if you can't tell, is to address these issues, is to talk about it, to no longer leave it in the shadows because we're all uncomfortable with the conversation of people molesting kids. Because guess what? It happens, it has happened, and it needs to stop. But it won't stop unless we acknowledge and we have conversation about it, which is what this book aims to do, is to raise awareness. It's not to tackle it head on. It's to raise awareness, to get people to ask questions, to push them a little bit past their comfort zone and be like, you know what? No longer okay with just doing it this way. No longer okay with just ignoring the problem. Especially as Christians, because our silence gives them permission to continue trafficking people, to continue hurting and harming kids and harming others. But we all, on a baseline, believer or not, can come to an agreement that these things are wrong. And we have to have conversation about it. Because if we don't have conversation about it, it won't change. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Yeah, that was an emotionally trying video. I will admit, it was very emotionally trying. Oh yeah, it's a black hole. Like Art Breeder is a black hole. I try and tell people with the caveat, be like, when you get addicted, like don't blame it on me, like because my friends got me hooked, and so now I'm spreading it. So, guys, thank you so much for your support, for being here for this live stream, for joining me and hearing about my passion. I didn't plan on talking about any of that stuff. I really didn't. I just want to share with you my book. I want to share my book with others. And so if you haven't already and you're interested in seeing how I develop these ideas, the link is down below in the show notes. Go sign up, and join the beta community. Join the community who's going to be seeing more and more of the book over the next couple of months. Join me in get the opportunity to have an invitation to my launch party. It'll probably be virtual. You get a signed copy. You get to help me vote on the cover because I don't have a cover yet. So you guys get to help me make this book what it's going to become in the end. And so if you know people and you're like, and that's the only way that you can support, which is totally fine, by the way. I know a lot of people are struggling with everything going on here. So if the only way that you can help is by clicking on that link that I showed, that little chain link on the campaign page, and sharing it with at least 11 people that you know, and be like, hey, I think you're going to like this book. Doesn't matter their background. I think you're going to like this book. You should pre-order. And you're going to get early access. I mean, they can check it out. They can watch the promo video, all that kind of stuff. But get them involved. I'm going to be having more conversations like this in the beta group as the beta group continues to grow. And I would love to have you guys there. But for those who your support, what you can do right now in this moment, simply is just showing up and watching this, I appreciate you. I really, really do. This means the world to me to have my book after 14 years of working towards this enter into a publishing phase is a absolute dream come true. So if you guys have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me on my Facebook page or on Instagram or on Twitter. I'm basically everywhere. And if you didn't already know, I also have now a Pinterest page. So for those of you who would like to see a little bit more about what the world looks like, the different styles between the 5 kingdoms and the realm of the Ergid, I would highly recommend checking that out. I don't think I actually have a link to it down in the show notes, so I will fix that after this. So give me about 10 minutes afterwards, and then you can come back if you're interested and check that out. So guys, thank you so much for showing up, for supporting on this whole crazy journey. I love you all, and I will catch you guys later. Take care, guys.